So in this episode, we'll be talking about the top 10 things that we were looking for in a liveaboard head when we were out hunting for the Elli-Yacht. And there's a couple things in there. Well,
we didn't think about.
We'll share those with you too. Let's get going. Join us on the Elli-Yacht as we realize our 5-year plan with the kids grown up, moved out, graduated from college. We take the dog, sold everything, and kitted out the boat so we can cruise the Pacific Northwest, all while living and working in the heart of Seattle.
Number 10 is ventilation. Whether it's the sink, the head, the shower, farts, you need ventilation.
Lots of it. It's a small space, and you want to make sure you can get everything out of it you possibly can. So this boat came with ventilation in the ceiling right next to the shower, which is good. It pulls out most of the moisture, although the vents that were put in, they were 3-inch ducting, and they were little squirrel cages that you would find in the bilge of a boat that would, be able to get the fuel fumes out of your engine compartment. And they have one thing in common.
They're noisy. So noisy. What were the decibels?
85.
That's noisy.
Pretty close to a jet engine taking off. It is terrible. So that's one of the things we had to change out on the boat. And that brings us to number 9.
Quiet systems. The head, if someone has to use that at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's a wake-up call.
Yeah, especially when you still have to go to work. You need a good night's sleep. And if you got super noisy heads, well, just listen to this thing.
That'll keep you up.
It really will.
Number 8 is lighting. In this head, we've got 3 lights up above. We've got one in the shower. We do have the portal that also brings in light when it's a sunny day.
Even with all of this light in this small area, it's still a pretty dimly lit space.
I've got a little light up mirror so I can put on my makeup.
Makeup mirror that self-lights.
That's nice.
It is.
And finding stray hairs.
Or gray hairs.
Or gray hairs.
That's a real thing now.
Number 7 is storage.
When you think about just the daily things you need, TP, toothbrushes, all those things, you're now living on a boat. And then you need to add some other things. You have to have a toilet brush because these heads, well, they can leave scud marks. They don't quite work as efficiently as a regular toilet. So you just have to have one of those on hand at all times. The other part is you need to have treatments, generally speaking, for the holding tank and those things. And all of that adds up. And that's not to mention the shower. The showers can be a lot smaller than a residential shower. And that means you can't really have stuff on the floor. You really wouldn't want to anyhow, because when the boat's moving around, all that stuff starts sliding around like a washing machine. Yep. So you need to add little things like these baskets that we've put in our shower. Just gets everything up off the floor, gives you that extra space, and you have places for your shampoos and your soaps and, well, all of the things you need to be able to be a liveaboard.
Number 6 is water pressure for that at-home experience when you're living aboard.
That generally means you want to be probably 60 psi and 5 gallons per minute at minimum. You can get pumps that are smaller, and they can be quieter as well, but you're going to sacrifice in the water pressure space. The other one you probably want to think about is having a wand in your shower. You want to be able to make sure to get that soap off, because even with these types of water pumps, it's never quite the same experience for water pressure, although later in the season we're looking at putting in a headhunter that is 20 gallons per minute. That should up the experience as far as water pressure, and it also gives us an option to do a freshwater wash down on our anchor road and all those things when we're on the hook. It's kind of nice, especially when you want to keep corrosion down. So that'll be a win-win for us a little bit later in the season. That brings us to number
5, heat. We have the system that blows through the ceiling, but it's not always enough. So we've got our little heaters on the countertop, which gives us a little bit more heat to help with the condensation and keep us warm.
In the morning in the winter, it's rare that we complain about being cold, but these heads, it seems to be the one place in the boat that does get a little bit chilly, and it's a place that, well, you're taking care of business. You don't want to be cold.
Number 4 is having a separate shower, sink, and head.
So you can find boats out there that have a head that basically has the shower and the head and the sink. They're all kind of combined in one area. That works great for a long weekend or even a couple weeks. You can get by with that. Works out pretty well. But if you're going to be living aboard, that makes it pretty tough. That's not to say you can't. It just wasn't the experience that we wanted to have. That brings us to number 3.
Countertops.
So we've had friends that have had boats as big as 65 feet, and they had gorgeous finish. Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe how beautiful they were. And all the space in the heads, you could move around, you didn't have to worry about bumping elbows. But here was the downside. They had these counters that, well, they didn't exist.
It was just the sink.
That was it.
You couldn't hardly even put your toothbrush on it.
Yeah, and if you can't put down your toothbrush and your hairbrush or, you know, even your toothpaste, it's not going to be an enjoyable live-aboard experience. So look at your counter space as you're looking to pick your live-aboard vessel would be our recommendation for that one.
Number 2 is having water-efficient heads and a big holding tank.
It doesn't matter if you have a manual pump head or if you have an electric one or a vacuum flush. You really want to have a system you can use as little water as possible, especially if you're out on the hook. And your holding tank, well, when you flush this thing, it has to go somewhere. We've seen boats 65 feet that have had 50-gallon holding tanks. That's not a lot if you're going live aboard. Again, fine for a weekend out or a day out, and it can even get a little tight after a week. Now, we have a 70-gallon holding tank, and that gives us just about, well, over 2 weeks. We can get about 17 days on that, and that's without skimping water. The one thing you'll learn too is that if you start using too little water, that's the number one reason that holding tanks really start stinking. So you do want to put as much water in as you possibly can without overfilling the head. It's a tricky balance. The heads that we have a switch that lets you just add as little water as you want to. We have a flush only function as well. So if you're just trying to get down, well, number 1. And it has a full function get her done number 2 setting as well. That one obviously uses the most water, but you want that one to use the most water.
Number 1 is redundancy.
These systems aren't like home systems. They are dependent on, well, this head is an electric head, so it has a motor that can and has died. And when you're out on the hook, well, there's not a lot of options. So you're either going to want to have a backup motor and spares for those types of things, or in our instance, we shopped for a boat that had 2 heads. Now, for some of you might say, 2 heads, what are you, crazy? You're living large. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you.
We're living aboard.
That's right. But it works out well when you do have a head that dies, or you have an issue with a shower head, or any of those types of things that can break. Having a second head can be invaluable. And not to mention, we're living together. The number 1 goal of this experience is that we love each other as much as absolutely possible and have a great time. And if you're bumping elbows and you're having to share heads, especially in these tight of spaces, it's kind of counterproductive to that goal. So that's our top 10. We'd love to hear about yours, and good luck shopping and hunting for that live-aboard.
See you next time.
Don't forget to subscribe if you like our content. It helps out a lot, gets the algorithm to work, and we actually might make it on this damn thing. And that brings us to number 9.
I don't know what number 9 is. Sorry.
It's what we're talking about. That brings us to number
3. Countertops.
Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Number 3 is countertops.
Look at that.